Welcome, dear audience, to This Week in Clown World, the video series dedicated to reliving the events of a simulation because yes, it's really happened and no, we weren't dreaming. Well, I cannot believe after starting this video series all the way back in January that I would nearly 9 months later still have an utterly buzzily endless stream of clown diarrhea to review. How was it even possible for grown adults to relentlessly embarrass themselves on an international stage? No idea, but they managed to do it. So with that out of the way, my dear bigoted audience, guys, it happened again. They dang did it another dumb, because remember when Jaguar Land Rover rebranded themselves as an LGTV non-binary they them fridge magnet and everybody laughed, and then they called us all bigots for it, and then their sales went down the toilet, and then their CEO rage quit? Well, get ready for the next one, because they're recording over 120,000 Range Rovers because their suspension is a heap of utter shite. And I know car recalls is a common occurrence these days, but are you telling me after all these years and after rebranding the Range Rover badge and all that diversity non-binary they them shite they diarrheaed out, it somehow didn't result in a better quality car and now they're recalling over 100,000 on them? Well, I would never have believed it if it wasn't looking at me square in the face. What a financial disaster this company is. But if you thought that was the only clown thing to happen this week, then you would be wrong. Dead wrong with AIDS, because deep in the heart of the Soviet Kingdom, the most bigliest covert mission that has ever missioned in the history of missioning is currently underway. Because remember back in World War II when we had like the Dam Busters and Operation Postmaster and the Enigma Code, and then a few years later we had the SAS storming the Iranian embassy, while the police force were undertaking Operation Costello where an entire criminal drug cartel got sent to time out for a while. Well, all of these soldiers and officers were a bunch of massive pussies, because Operation Some Bloke Catcalled Me Out of a Van is undoing the patriarchy of these once fine lands. Yes, just as the children are getting raped by boat people who broke into our country, and everybody's getting stabbed without a license while shoplifting is completely out of control, sorry police decided, you know what, let's ignore all of that and instead get two moderately attractive police birthing persons with actually pretty great behinds to go jog around popular areas, because if they do that, then dirty bigoted persons with prostates will go, oi oi, that's a proper cracking ass right there. I'll think about that while having me bottle of water later, innit? But they did that without a license, so then the police will pull them over, tell them off for finding women attractive, even though it isn't against the law, and once again spunk everybody's money firmly up the wall. Jesus, Mother Mary of fucking Christ, this is legit one of the most embarrassing things this country has ever done. But if you thought everything was utterly terrible, well, at least some people got to enjoy these once fine lands, because our dear friend Mr. J.D. Vance took a nice vacation to the Cotswold, and that's really, really nice. But not far from him was the dumbest village idiot of the Soviet Kingdom and also international embarrassment, David Lammy, the foreign secretary who once called the Trump man a neo-1940s Germany man and was really racist, but now he's on his knees begging for an orange tea bag. Well, they went fishing, a recreational activity once enjoyed by many, but this is the Soviet Kingdom, remember? He did not have a license. So now, the foreign secretary of the United Kingdom has had to refer himself to the watchdog for going unlicensed with a rod. Hey, here's hoping he gets 25 days to life. Also, needing a fishing license to go fishing is a pretty damn well-known thing in this country. Meanwhile, on the train, welly is another weekly installment of Diversity is Our Strength, of course, because as families were returning home having enjoyed a day of paying through their ass cracks in taxes for worsening public services, a local diversity man thought, you know what, I think I could cheer all these guys up by dropping my trowel and getting my chode out. And that's pretty bad, right? I mean, there's kids there, and when the government told us they were going to be culturally enriching us by importing half of Somalia, they did not mean this, surely. Well, the English have now busted their nuts with the utter shite we've had to put up with now through traitorous acts of government that have been forced upon us. And after the engineering doctor man refused to pull his trousers up, he got a nice, cold, hard bigot pie right in the head and kicked off the train at the next stop. Oh no, how bad. They should have let him carry on, surely. Well, that's what the police were thinking, as they're now considering arresting the, let me check my notes, guys who stopped the bloke with his knob out on a train in front of women and children. But as the peasants groaned at yet another episode of enrichment, the boat children with fully grown beards thought, hey, I know what would cheer up those miserable sods. How's about I just straight up go walking into women's houses because they left the door open? Wow for everyone! Surely that boatman was only there because he wanted to utilise his engineering skills and do a structural survey, right? Nothing odd about this, it happens all the time. Well, we won't know the true intentions of chartered IMEC engineering man because once again, along came the bigoted English peasants who helped the woman out by refusing his cavity wall inspection. And when the police turned up, they were like, what are you picking on this guy for, governor? Sure, he may have entered the house without permission and could pose a serious threat to the peasants of these lands on the account of we having absolutely no fucking idea who he is or his motivations. But we are not going to arrest him. He is free to go. This is entirely a civil matter. And so the chartered IMEC engineer was back on the streets and the police returned to the woman's house and arrested her for having a little bit of the devil's lettuce and also a butter knife, and that's illegal, not walking into people's houses while also breaking into the country. God bless this failed state. But one thing I do love about this story is how open and friendly our new boatman looks. Almost like a quiet Welsh Christian boy. He won't be a threat to anyone. And if you have a problem with that, you're under arrest, mate. Now, if you're thinking the entire British state is now based on a two-tier system, namely a justice system that would imprison and oppress the native British people while treating diversity with cuddles and kisses, well, you would be wrong. Dead wrong with A's, because that definitely doesn't happen unless you're white. Yes, during the Southport riots last year where the OG small Christian choir boy from Wales mercilessly slaughtered the children, anger had boiled over, creating two divisions in society. One side who don't want their children raped and murdered, and the other side who want to ensure it does happen by importing dangerous, unchecked, low-skilled barbarian men from third world countries. And during a refugees welcome protest, where the people literally think a bunch of blokes turning up on a boat are a refugee, which I may add is some kind of real dumb shite, a Labour councillor stood with a microphone and called on the crowd to slice the throats of anybody who has a problem with that. Now that is a violent call to action, something that is objectively illegal. And so he was put through the court system and tried for it. But something happened during this trial. It turns out Mr. Councillor Man had lived an entire life of really bad racism apparently. So he ended up just getting away with it. While everywhere else, if you called the police scum, you would get arrested and put in jail for it. Or if you post something on the internet which has got some spicy words and then delete it off knowing you had done wrong, you also go to jail. It almost makes you proud to be British, innit? Alright then, what next? Well, the British government are trying to fine 4chan for having spicy words on the internet again after the online harms bill came into effect. But 4chan politely told them to get the fuck out of it because the Soviet government aren't the internet police and have zero jurisdiction on the United States, where those lucky, dirty, tea-dumping traitors have the freedom of speech ingrained in their law. So again, the Soviet kingdom can fuck right off. And talking of the dirty tea dumpers, they've also released a report detailing how they are concerned with serious freedom violations across Europe, and that could have some ramifications going ahead with the relationship between the countries. Well, the United States are completely wrong and we definitely have freedom of speech here, just don't say anything naughty about our imported clientele or you're going straight to prison. Because remember guys, Keir Starlin told the United States president that we definitely have freedom of speech in this country, so don't worry about the online harms bill and all those other arrests because somebody got offended. My god, we truly live in the weak men part of the cycle, don't we? Alright, with that out of the way, let's head to Spain. Lovely place, great holiday destination. A bit on fire right now though, isn't it? It must be that very naughty global warming doing it. There definitely cannot be any other reason why all these fires have been started. Oh, hang on a second, what's this? A bunch of people, including a firefighter, have been arrested for arson. Wow, this is shocking. Why would a firefighter do this? To get more work apparently. And business has been booming. Although that might be because he set the fires. Hey, it may not be orthodox, but it's honest work. But just when you're thinking that that was really, really weird, ladies and gentlemen, theys and thems, we're heading to Brazil because just this week a local farmer man got hired and on his first day on the job decided, you know what, I'm going to beat off my fellow colleague to death and then eat his brains. That's actually pretty concerning because if that's a new TikTok trend, then we're all going to die. And even worse, Leah, nobody knows why he did it, he just lordy did it. Moving on, the Orange Man had Mr. Potato Head over for Sunday lunch in Alaska to discuss ending the whoops-a-daisy in Ukraine. Or should I say, the absolute brutal war that has left thousands upon thousands dead, and although I'm no longer fond of the Orange Man because of the sus shit regarding the Epstein files, this is an important time because peace can be returning to the European and Asian continent. So it's for a good cause, right? Wrong! He's an evil orange man who wants to stop wars instead of encouraging them and or starting them. But although this meeting did not result in immediate peace, rather a discussion on the terms and whatnot, boy didn't that orange man flex with a B-2 bomber flying right over Mr. Potato Putin's head. Yeah, that was actually a pretty badass moment, not gonna lie. But I want assurances. Once the war in Ukraine and Russia is over, the United States will concentrate on liberating Europe from themselves. But before I end this week in Clown World, my fellow British Soviet peasants, the fight back has started in a truly English way as Operation Raise the Colours is in full swing. And if you haven't heard what that MacGuffin's about, well, let me splooge a knowledge dump into your gaping knowledge hole. Last week, Birmingham Council removed Soviet Jack flags to make way for Pakistan Independence Day celebrations within the UK. Because all those Pakistanis absolutely love what they've done with their own country that they decided they'll all start moving here. And for the Soviet peasants, this was the final straw that busted our nuts. Taking down our flag and replacing it with another's is literally conquering shit. So in an act of civil disobedience the likes we have never seen before, the patriots of these once fine lands are now systematically going around their local neighbourhoods putting up the star-spangled Soviet Jack, and that's pissing the councils right off, who claim it's a danger to the public even though they were absolutely fine when it was the Palestinian flag. Get the fuck out of here, commies! The peasants are revolting! Big shout out to my boys and guys. My mummy told me not to kiss the bigots, but she didn't realise I don't listen to women, so pucker up boys, we're going to Paris. Love you all very much, Lee.
Subscribe button.
It's always right.